My brother-in-law made a toast at my sister's graduation party. He stood up, clinked his glass, and said, "To the Harmon family, the people who actually show up." Everyone laughed. My mother beamed. My sister pressed her hand to her chest like she might cry from the beauty of it. And I sat at the end of the table, cutting my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, thinking about the $2,400 I had wired 3 days earlier to cover the catering bill they couldn't afford. Nobody looked at me. I smiled at my plate and let the moment pass, the way I always did. The way I'd been doing for 4 years. The Harmon house was never a quiet place. 3 kids, 2 dogs, one mother who believed that love was expressed through busyness, through packed schedules and loud opinions and Sunday dinners that lasted 3 hours. My father was the opposite. Steady, soft-spoken, the kind of man who communicated through small gestures. He'd leave a cup of coffee on your desk without saying a word. He'd check your tires before a long drive and never mention it. I grew up between them, the middle child, the one who didn't need much. My older sister, Vera. No, wait. I need to get the names right in my head before I keep going, because this story matters and I want to tell it true. My sister. Let me just call her what she always was to everyone in that house. The favorite. Not in a cruel way, not intentionally, but she was louder, funnier, more expressive. She cried at commercials and laughed too hard at her own jokes and filled every room she walked into. My mother gravitated toward her the way sunflowers track light. It wasn't something anyone decided, it was just physics. My brother-in-law had been in the picture since my sister was 22, charming in that effortless way that makes you distrust a person slightly. He called my mother Mom within 6 months of meeting her. She loved that. He drove a nice car, talked about investments, had opinions about wine. My father liked him because my mother liked him, and my father's love language was keeping the peace. I was the quiet one. The one who worked in accounting. The one who lived 40 minutes away in a small apartment that I kept very clean and very orderly because it was the only space in my life that made complete sense. I was also, for 4 years, the one paying for the life they were all living. It started the summer my parents refinanced. I was 26. My father called me on a Tuesday evening, which was unusual. He was a texter, not a caller. He asked if I had a few minutes. I said yes. There was a long pause, the kind that has weight to it. The business hadn't recovered, he said, the one he and my uncle had run for 11 years. The pandemic had done what it did to a lot of small companies. Stretched them, then snapped them. My uncle had walked away early. My father had held on too long. By the time he let go, the damage was done. They'd already refinanced once. The second refinance had bought them 8 more months, but now those 8 months were almost up. If they missed 2 more payments, the bank would move forward. He didn't say foreclose. He said move forward, like it was a polite thing, like the bank was just continuing a conversation. How much? I asked. $2,400 a month. I was quiet for a moment. I did the math fast, the way I always do, occupational habit. My rent was $1,100. My car was paid off. I had just gotten a raise that bumped my annual salary to $62,000. After taxes and my own bills, $2,400 was almost like what I had left over each month. It was the entire margin of my life. I said yes anyway, because I was 26 and I still believed that family was the kind of thing you held together with your own hands, if that's what it took. Because my father sounded smaller on the phone than I'd ever heard him. Because I thought it would be temporary. He made me promise not to tell my mother. He said she'd be devastated if she knew the full picture. He said she'd blame herself, and that it would break something in her that he wasn't sure could be fixed. I believed him. I also believed him when he said it would be a year, maybe less. It was 4 years. $2,400 every month, transferred from my account on the 3rd of every month, regular as a heartbeat. I set it up as automatic so I wouldn't have to think about it each time, because if I thought about it each time, I wasn't sure I could keep going. I canceled my gym membership. I stopped taking vacations. My friends started a trip to Portugal the summer I turned 28, and I told them I had too much going on at work. That was easier than explaining. I watched their photos on Instagram from my couch and told myself next year, next year, next year. My parents remodeled the kitchen. They took a long weekend in Savannah. My sister got engaged, and my mother threw them a dinner party for 40 people at the house, and I helped plan it. And when I asked quietly if they wanted me to handle the catering invoice the way I'd been handling other things, my mother looked at me blankly and said, "Oh, we're fine, honey. Don't worry." They were not fine. My father texted me 2 days later. I transferred the money. My sister never knew. My mother never asked. And my brother-in-law, who toasted the family that actually shows up, had no idea that the reason he was eating past hors d'oeuvre in my parents' newly renovated kitchen was because I had spent 4 years making sure there was still a kitchen to stand in. The graduation party was for my sister finishing her master's degree. She'd taken 4 years to complete a 2-year program, which was fine, genuinely fine. Life gets complicated. But there had been a lot of financial help along the way. Tuition gaps my parents covered with home equity. A laptop my father found a deal on. A security deposit my mother paid when my sister moved apartments in her 2nd year. I know these things because my father told me about each one quietly in the parking lots of grocery stores or over the phone on Tuesday evenings. He told me the way a person tells you about small floods, apologetically, as though the water is embarrassing. I kept paying. At the graduation party, I arrived on time, which meant I was the first guest there. I helped my mother arrange the folding tables. I put out the napkins. I drove to the store when she realized she'd forgotten to buy extra ice. When my sister arrived, she hugged my mother for a long time. She hugged my brother-in-law. She hugged a friend I didn't recognize. Then she saw me across the room and said, "Oh, good, you made it," with the particular warmth of someone who expected you to be furniture. The toast happened around 8. My brother-in-law stood up like a man who enjoys standing up, and he said what I already told you. The family that actually shows up, everyone raised asses. I raised mine too, and something cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was a quiet thing, like when the temperature drops just enough that you hear a branch split somewhere in the dark. I pressed my thumb against the stem of my glass and thought, I have transferred $115,200 to keep this house standing. I have shown up every single month for 4 years, and nobody in this room knows my name is on that. I drove home that night very carefully. I sat in my parking garage for 11 minutes before going inside. Then I opened my laptop and I looked at every transaction. 48 of them. 4 years, every month. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining, date, amount, confirmation number. Because I am an accountant and I document things, that's just how I'm built. The total sat at the bottom of the column, neat and precise. $115,200. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and I called my father. He answered on the second ring, which meant he was still awake, which meant he knew I might call. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to answer me honestly." He said, "Okay. Are you in a position to take this over now?" Long pause. Then, "Things are still tight. How long?" Another pause. "I don't know." I closed my laptop. I looked at my ceiling. I thought about Portugal. "I'm going to stop the transfer," I said. "Starting next month." He didn't say no. He didn't argue. He said very quietly, "I understand." And that was almost worse than if he'd fought me on it. I didn't sleep well. I lay there and cataloged all the ways I could tell myself this was the right thing and all the ways I could feel guilty about it anyway. The good daughter doesn't abandon her family. But the good daughter also doesn't fund her own erasure, and I wasn't sure anymore where the line was between those two things. In the morning, I canceled the automatic transfer. The confirmation email arrived at 7:14 a.m. I read it once, then made coffee, then went to work. I told myself I would let it settle before I said anything to anyone else. I wasn't going to show up at their door with a spreadsheet. I wasn't going to send a dramatic group text. I was just going to stop quietly the way I'd started, alone, without ceremony, without applause. But then my sister called me 2 weeks later. She called on a Thursday evening, which was also unusual. She was even less of a caller than my father. She asked how I was doing. I said fine. She asked about work. I said good. Then she said, "Mom mentioned the mortgage payment didn't come through this month. You know anything about that? I sat very still. She mentioned it to you? I said. Yeah, she said Dad was stressed about it. I didn't even know you were involved with that. There was a pause in which I understood several things at once. My mother knew. She'd known for some time, probably longer than I'd been told, and my sister had just confirmed it in the most casual way possible, as though this were minor household information, a footnote. I've been making that payment, I said carefully, every month for 4 years. Silence. What? $2,400 a month. 4 years. $115,000. More silence. Then, that can't be right. I have the records. Why didn't you say something? I thought about the answer to that for a moment. I thought about my father on the phone, sounding small. I thought about my mother who couldn't know, or it would break her. I thought about being 26 and believing in temporary. I was asked not to, I said. My sister said she'd call me back. She didn't call me back. What she did instead was text my mother, and then my mother called me. And then, 3 days later, I was invited to Sunday dinner, phrased as exactly like that. An invitation, not a summons, although we all understood what it was. I went. I wore the blazer I wear when I need to feel competent. I brought nothing. I drove myself. The house looked the same. That always got me, how thoroughly unchanged a place can look when everything underneath it has shifted. The kitchen with its new countertops. The dining room with the chandelier my mother found at an estate sale, the year I was quietly making payments in the dark. My father was already at the table when I arrived. He stood up when I walked in, which he never does. That small gesture told me everything about how he'd been sitting with this. My mother hugged me at the door. Her hug felt different, tighter, more careful, like she was checking to see if something was broken. My sister was already seated. My brother-in-law was in the kitchen opening a bottle of something. He came out, saw my face, and made an excuse to go back in. Smart. We sat down. My mother had made pot roast, which was what she always made when things were serious. Some families had therapists. We had pot roast. Nobody voted for the first few minutes. The silverware was very loud. Then my mother said, "Your father explained the situation to me." I looked at him. He was looking at his plate. "Some of it," I said. She folded her hands. "I want you to know that I had no idea. I didn't know the full extent of, Mom." I set down my fork. "It's okay." "It's not okay," she said, and her voice cracked on the last word in a way that made me want to comfort her and feel frustrated that I wanted to comfort her. "No," I agreed. "It's not." My sister looked up. "You should have told us. Any of us. I could have helped." I looked at her for a moment. I thought about the long weekend in Savannah, the laptop, the 40-person engagement dinner. "I'm glad you would have," I said. "That would have been good." She heard what I didn't say. She looked back down. My father finally spoke. He said my name. Just my name, the way parents say it when they mean more than they know how to say. "I convinced myself it wasn't hurting you," he said. "That you were fine. That you would have said something if it was too much. You told me not to say anything. I know. To anyone. I know." There's a particular kind of quiet that happens when truth settles into a room. It's not comfortable. It doesn't feel like resolution. It feels like altitude change, a pressure in the ears, a slight dizziness, the sense that the air is thinner than it was. We sat in it for a while. Then my brother-in-law came back in from wherever he'd been and sat down and said very sincerely, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. The toast, at the party, I didn't know." I believed him. That was the strange part. I believed all of them, in their way. My father hadn't wanted to collapse the story they'd all been living. My mother hadn't wanted to see what she didn't want to see. My sister had been living at the center of her own life, the way people do. None of it was malicious. Most of the worst things aren't. "I'm not coming back to the payments," I said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not angry in a way that needs an apology tour. I need that to be clear." My mother nodded. "I also want to say," I stopped, picked up my fork, set it back down. "I want to say that I did it because I love you. Not because I was a pushover. Not because I didn't know what I was doing. I did it because I was 26 and I love this family and my father needed help and I said yes. But I've been saying yes for 4 years and I need to stop." Nobody argued with that. We ate. It was strained, and then it was less strained, and then my mother asked my sister about a colleague of hers, and the conversation moved sideways into easier territory, the way family conversations do when they've said the necessary thing and need somewhere to go afterward. I left at 9. My father walked me to my car. He stood there in the driveway in his cardigan, hands in his pockets, looking like a man trying to figure out what kind of apology fits inside a moment like this. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. I know it doesn't cover it." "But I am. I know you are," I said. "We'll figure out the payments. The house. I know you will." He hugged me. It lasted longer than usual. I drove home with the window down even though it was cold. The air felt necessary. The months after that were strange in the way that honest things are strange. When you've spent a long time inside a comfortable lie. The house went on the market in late winter. My parents decided together, without crisis, to downsize. They found a townhouse 20 minutes away, smaller but all theirs, nothing owed to anyone but the bank. My mother sent me a photo of their new kitchen on the first morning. Small, bright, a window above the sink that looked out onto a little courtyard. She wrote, "It feels like ours." And then, after a pause, "I should have looked closer on it." I saved that text. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because apologies in our family usually came disguised as other things, as pot roast, as tight hugs, as not asking questions. That one came as itself, just the words, honest and plain, and I wanted to keep it. My sister and I talked about it once, properly, a few months later. We met for coffee, which was not a thing we usually did without a holiday attached to it. She was different, a little quieter, a little more careful. She said she'd been thinking about the party, about the toast, about how she'd said, "Oh, good, you made it when I arrived, like I was an afterthought." She said, "I think I've been taking you for granted my whole life and I didn't know it until now. I thought about that. I think I made it easy," I said. "That's not an excuse." "No, it's not." We had our coffee. We talked about other things. We laughed a few times, which surprised me. At the end, she said she wanted to do it again. Meet like this, regularly. I said yes, I meant it. My brother-in-law still makes toasts at family dinners. He's gotten more careful with them. Less sweeping. He said something at Easter about gratitude being a practice, not a feeling, which was either very wise or something he read somewhere, but either way it landed right. I bought myself a trip to Portugal, not to be symbolic about it. I just finally had the margin. I went in September. I walked a lot. I ate very good bread. I sat at a cafe table one morning with coffee and watched the city wake up around me and felt, for the first time in a long time, like I was living inside my own life instead of quietly underwriting someone else's. I called my mother from the airport on the way home. She asked if I had a good time. I said yes. She asked if I'd go back. I said maybe. She said she'd always wanted to go to Lisbon. I said I'd take her someday, and I meant that too. The thing about carrying something in secret for a long time is that when you finally put it down, the relief doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces. It comes when you check your bank account on the 4th of the month, and the number is what you left it. It comes when your father texts you about something small, a TV show he thought you'd like, a news story he found interesting, and you realize the relationship is becoming something else now, something less weighted, something that might just be two people who like each other. It comes, eventually. I kept the spreadsheet. Not to hold over anyone. Not as evidence of anything. I kept it because it's 48 rows of a version of myself that I need to remember. A person who loved her family so completely that she gave them everything she had, and who also, finally, learned that loving people and losing yourself in the process are two different things, and that the line between them deserves more attention than I gave it. Contribution isn't the same as silence. I know that now. I knew it before, in the theoretical way you know things before they cost you something. Now I know it the other way. The way that changes how you move through the world, quietly but completely, like a door that opens in a direction it couldn't open before. Some mornings I sit at my kitchen table with my coffee, and I look at the window and I think, this is mine. The quiet, the space, the margin, the morning, all of it, mine. Not because I stopped loving my family, Because I finally remembered to love myself too, and it turned out there was enough to go around after all.